differentiation from the first principle. When you hear about differentiation from first principle, then the limits of h approaching 0 the function of x plus h minus the function of x all over h. This is differentiation from first principle, how it works. Now, let's begin applying this formula to solve such a question. Y is given by sine of 3x, but y represents the function of x, which is given by sine of 3x. Now, we have the function of x. How can we get the function of x plus h? Therefore, the function of x plus h is given by what? The sine of 3 into x plus h. Let's we now apply this to our question. Therefore, limits of h now approaching to 0, it will be the function of x plus h, which is sine 3x plus h, then minus the function of x, which is sine of 3x, we divide by h. Let's continue with our question. Now, opening the brackets for sine, it will be sine 3x plus 3h minus sine 3x. So, divided by h. We can see here there's application of compound angles, where I say that sine of a plus b is given by sine of a cos of b. Then we add sine of b cos of a. Let's open this one here. So it will be sine of 3x cos of 3h plus sine of 3h cos of 3x minus this, which is sine of 3x all over h. Therefore, mathematically, it is correct mathematically if you write this function as sine of 3x cos 3h over h plus sine of 3h over h cos of 3x minus sine of 3x all over h. Now, what should we now do? The limits of this function, h is approaching 0. The limits, remember, we had our limit here, where the limit of h is approaching 0. It approaches 0 in our. So the limit of this function now, when h approaches to 0, for course, when h approaches to 0 here, this is just like writing it as sine 3x, we multiply by 3 multiply. When cos of h over h approaches to 0, the limits of cos of h over h approaching to 0 is 0, plus the limit of h sine of h, the limits of sine of h over h, when h approaches to 0, this equals to 1. Then this it will be 3 multiplied by 1 multiplied by cos of 3x, because 3x does not vary with h. Finally, the limit of sine of a number which is not equal to h approaching when h approaches to 0, therefore this value automatically becomes 0. Then we minus 0. Therefore, 3 multiplied by 0, it will give us 0. 0 multiplied by sine of 3x, it will also give us 0. Therefore, dy dx from our first principle, dy over dx, now it will be given by 3 multiplied by cos of 3x. Therefore, it is done from the first principle. The derivative of sine of 3x is given by 3 cos of 3x. We can prove that. For those who have, this such kind of a question, it needs some concepts which you have to have such a concept for you to come and apply it here. For example, the limits here, they have been applied in this question. Limits, you have to have such a concept of limits, and also the differentiation these are just general differentiation rules for sine, for trigonometry. For example, the derivative, for example, if this one is the function of x is given by sine of 3x. General differentiation for this sine, each sine, general differentiation of sine of a number like sine x, it automatically gives you cos of x. And the general differentiation of cos of x, when you differentiate cos, mathematically it should give you a negative sine of x. So mathematically, when you differentiate sine of x, it should give you cosine of x. And when you differentiate, so dx. So dx, derivative of sine x should give you cos of x. And therefore, the derivative of cos of x should give you negative sine of x. So let's come back to our question. What is the derivative? The second derivative. The first, the first derivative of this function, it will be what? Now we can see here that there's two functions, the function of 3x and sine of 3x. In differentiation, we can apply a rule of what? The chain rule. Chain rule is applicable there because we have some two functions, the function of 3x and sine of 3x. Now, the chain rule says that when you are given such a function, then you first find the derivative of the whole function without considering the small function. Now, the larger function is sine of 3x. Now, because it's the larger function, and we say that the derivative of sine is cosine of 3x. Now, we multiply. Chain rule says that you have to take the derivative of the larger function multiply the derivative of the smaller function with the smaller function is 3x. Now, what is the derivative of 3x? The derivative of 3x is 3. Therefore, the second derivative of this, or dy dx, which is the first derivative. So, which is dy over dx is given by what? 3 cosine of 3x, which we have proved it to be correct. So, this is correct.